So I'm up here in the front, in the cockpit, with the crew that is managing the flight here of this E3 Sentry AWACS. I'm going to interview Major Class. He's been gracious enough to sit down as an instructor pilot to talk with me and discuss some of the capabilities of the aircraft and some situations and scenarios that could come up and what their reactions were. So I guess my first question is, can you just generally describe the responsibilities of the pilots during these missions?
Well, we have to remember it's a joint community up here also. So we have the minimum manning would be 2 pilots and a flight engineer. So for the pilots, they obviously pilot the plane. They steer the plane, they navigate the plane, they talk to agencies outside to make sure that the airspace is clear for them to pass through. Whereas the flight engineer manages all these panels, actually keeps the plane flying, the engines running, hydraulics running. He does, pressure control of the plane. I mean, all the system-wise. He also makes sure that all the systems in the back have power. So we're kind of providing the platform for all our comrades in the back, so they can actually do their job.
Awesome. So what would you say is the most challenging aspect up here? Is it just individual challenges that everyone has to face, or is there something that is particularly challenging in just a normal mission?
Well, the most challenging, unfortunately, you won't see it today, is when we do air refueling. That does take some time to learn if you have not done it on previous platforms before you join the NATO community. So that is because all pilots and engineers who joins the component have been flying for a lot of years on their previous posts. But the air refueling is a challenge for most people here. So that can take some time to learn. For a lot of reasons. But sitting with 2 jets weighing up towards 130,000-40,000 kilos and trying to get fuel from one to the other, it is a challenge.
So how do you coordinate between what's going on up here and what is happening with the operators back in the rear of the operations? Is there some sort of liaison? Do you work with some kind of mission command system back there? How do you relay between the two of you what's exactly going on, what you're seeing and what they're seeing?
Well, 90% of this has already been hashed out before we take off, right? We know, the tactical director in the back, he kind of owns the mission, right? He knows more than anybody about what's going on in the mission, right? So he's asking for all the sections to provide what they need to provide. For us, we need to get where we need to be going. We need to be there at the right time, at the right altitude. We need to be able to stay there long enough for him to do his mission. It's obviously, and 90% of this is orchestrated or actually scheduled and planned even before we go to the jet, right? So it's not like we just get in the jet and see what goes on. We already know where he wants to go, so we have a plan. We'll lay it out for him, and he says, well, that's a good plan, and then we execute. So, but the liaison between it's verbal, right? We have communication system on different nets, so we already communicate that verbally if we need to change something. If there are, the mission is normally have different different phases. The takeoff phase and the climb to altitude, the cruise phase, getting on station, all these phases, we keep each other informed about what's going on, so he can make sound decisions on how to run the mission, right? So in all simplicity, the tactical director is the owner of the mission, right? He's the overarching coordinator of everything that takes place on the plane, and in all simplicity, we just need to get him where he needs to do his mission, right? And then that's about, narrowed down to make it as simple as possible.
So, in the event of, let's say, a non-combat emergency, like you have a flame out on an engine or something, At what point does the decision-making process shift to the aircraft commander to make a decision versus what the tactical director wants to do?
Exactly at that point. Once it becomes a once safety of flight becomes an issue at any degree, the aircraft commander needs to make a decision where the mission has to have lower priority than actually getting everybody safely back on the ground. There are variances. There could be minor technical issues. If we can resolve them, maybe we will not even bother the TD with a lot of information because he's doing his stuff. It could be small things that this plane is more than capable of handling, even though there is a minor system degradation. If it's not affecting the safety of flight, if it's not affecting the mission capability of the jet, then we will deal with it and inform him so he knows what's going on, right? But at some point, if it happens that the contingency goes into a safety of flight, then it will, as you mentioned, the roles will shift. Now the TD will be reactive to what the AC needs of support from the back end. That could be fighting the fire. It could be getting information that will help the aircraft commander getting the plane back on ground. But it is exactly like you mentioned initially, when it becomes some kind of contingency / emergency, then it is still a flying platform where the captain or the aircraft commander has their hammer and the responsibility of getting everybody safely back on ground.
So this exercise we're on, the mission specific to this exercise, is rather short for what I've seen you guys normally do. You guys have done 10-hour missions before. How do you manage fatigue and maintain the sharpness up here during that so that you're not getting tired? It's obviously quite dark up here. Maintaining your skill set, your focus without being too fatigued.
Well, I mean, that's all the nature of aviation. I mean, we're not the only ones flying for a long time. So it is inbred in the whole trade of flying planes. You see planes flying across the Atlantic 20 hours, or maybe not 20 hours, but at least 10. So aviation, a lot of times, like now when we're on station, the workload is very low. So obviously we take the time to not rest, but not be at the high alert state. But we're ready to move into high alert state if needed. If the missions become really long, we will augment the crew, so there will be a minimum of 3 pilots and 2 flight engineers. So one can actually leave, go to the back, relax a little bit, maybe even take a nap if it's a really long mission. So that is built in our regulatory framework, how that operates when the mission becomes this long. If the missions fly at odd hours, like outside the normal circadian window where you're acclimatation period, then you would augment the crew at some point to make sure that we will not be sitting here for 20 hours falling asleep behind the controls.
So when it comes to the aerodynamics of the aircraft, you have a large dome on the top, 10 meters across roughly. How does that affect the aerodynamics and the maneuverability relative to a normal non-AWACS style aircraft?
I mean, the weight, obviously, it's not as heavy as it looks, but it does weigh a little bit, right? So that has some effects on the center of gravity of the plane, but that is all the plane was born with the antenna, right? It came from a 707, which is a civilian jet, but once this plane was fabricated back in the days, it was built so it is balanced. You put avionics to the front, other heavy stuff to the front, fuel is further to the front to balance the jet. Aerodynamically, the red dome is neutral. That's why it has this kind of neutral shape. Even though the antenna is it looks like a ship antenna, right? It's a bar that rotates, but you have the big shell put on it, so when it rotates, it will have the same shape through the airflow. So the big black portions you'll see on the antenna are hollow. There's nothing there. It's just the antenna is like a bar, right? So that is also too aerodynamically So it's not changing shapes. Even though it's rotating, it'll have the same aerodynamic shape. Also, the shape of the antenna, it is symmetrical, so it's not like an airfoil creating lift or downwash or something like that. So it is neutral. Also, you can see the mounts of the antenna on its two legs.
Yeah.
So the air will flow through and hit the flight control surfaces of the tail. So you still have normal authority of the flight control on the vertical stab and the rudder and such. So it does provide some drag, like driving with something on top of your car. So we fly a little slower than other 707 planes would do, and we burn a little more gas. Nothing is for free, right? But it doesn't impact the flying capability of the jet.
Awesome, thanks. So a big question that a lot of my followers had is on defensive capabilities. After speaking with some of the other members of the crew, understand there's no countermeasures on the aircraft, no chaff, no flares. What happens up here if you are painted by an enemy radar? They somehow have got in close enough to potentially engage. Are there any evasion or countermeasure tactics that you as pilots up here have that you would take, or is it we're just a big 707 with a dome and we're cooked at that point?
Well, the short answer is yes, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna, of course, we have tactics to avoid. It's obvious that we cannot maneuver against like airborne assets or even like missiles of most kinds. So the philosophy is never get caught in that situation. Obviously, the TD will know of the dangers long before they become dangerous, and that's like the baseline. Also, in a real scenario, an asset like this would probably have a significant amount of protection. But aside from that, I think it becomes a little bit more too specific to dive into in this forum.
It's kind of a classified discussion situation. Now, I understand. So, looking at the future of the AWACS program, eventually you guys are, I believe, transitioning to the E7, and that's going to take over. What do you see the future roles specifically up here looking like with regard to, are all the roles going to be the same? Is it going to be less crew up here, or is more automated or even artificial intelligence systems going to manage more of the tasks of the flight up here with the more advanced E7 coming online?
I mean, the E7 is a newer platform. It's come from the Boeing 737, which is quite old, but it's obviously a newer model they're using as the backbone of the E7. That being said, the flight engineer will have no seat in that plane. The cockpit will actually stop around here, right? Yeah, it's going to look somewhat similar to a 737 airplane.
Like a commercial airplane like Delta or...
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
It's one of the most built planes in the world, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the configuration is on the demand of the user. The platform has been operational for quite some years. It's not something that is built for this acquisition.
Okay.
It's already flying in several places around the world. Obviously, there are the user can ask for specifications, but the baseline has been laid out already. AR has not found its way into this technology yet, but the whole automation is of a higher generation of what you're seeing here, right? It's, like most modern plane, the pilots they're still pilots, but they manage. It's more like a managing role. Everything is automated. You can program everything from the ground, and almost you'll still do the takeoff manually and land the plane manually, even though this generation plane can do it if you opt for that functionality. But it's like you plan everything ahead, and then you kind of press play and just do adjustments along the way. Everything is automated, and so you're more managing the whole situation, right? So that's kind of the short way to explain it. But that is transparent into all aviation. When this plane was a passenger jet, back in the days when I was a kid, I actually flew on this with my parents going on holiday, right? Then it was still two pilots, a flight engineer and a navigator. As technology improves, the navigator goes away, and the technology improves, the flight engineer, a lot of the manual traits of his trade is being automated today by computers, but not AI. It's just normal circuitry that does the automation.
So one final question, just kind of a personal interest of what do you like the most about flying one of these? What do you think makes you go, like, look, I do this, I'm kind of a badass, I do cool things that other pilots, you're a very, very small subset of pilots out there, thousands of pilots flying aircraft. You have the opportunity to fly one of the most advanced systems. What is your favorite thing about it? And also, what is something that kind of irks you a bit? What would you prefer? Maybe an upgrade that they would do or something. Better bathrooms, I don't know. So,
that would be nice.
So.
I think I can only speak for myself, but I think this is a general trait that once you do a job with a uniform in the military, I mean, there are a lot of arguments for doing that. For me, I've been in the military for a lot of years, and I have had ample opportunities to leave the opportunity for other jobs, right? I've never considered, to me, being in the military and obviously doing what I love to do makes much more sense than flying airliners. But that's a very personal thing. Like, to me, it makes a lot of sense to put on a uniform and do something that, to me, makes more sense than just doing normal aviation. That's specifically on this job. I actually enjoy the multinational community.
Yeah.
I came from air mobility background in my own Air Force back home in Denmark, which I love. But I actually really do like the multinationality. Today I'm flying with 3 Italians. That's pretty fun, right? You get to learn a lot of cultures, so I like that. I've been flying highly advanced computer airplanes also previously, and I actually like this, which is not that. Going back to some of the basics, this jet in particular requires a lot of pilot skills to fly, because you have no help. You have to really, it's really basic, right? You really have to pilot it to make it fly well. I think that is actually a fun thing to return to after flying fully automated planes for quite some time, where I've been pressing on buttons more than flying planes. Now I'm back to old school piloting, where skill set it's a different skill set that I get to employ, and I actually like that about it.
It makes a lot of sense. I do think that's very cool. So
it's like the circle.
Yeah,
going back,
relearning all of the things you may forget computers do. So, Major Klaus, really appreciate the interview. Thank you so much. Thank you to the people of Denmark for providing such a great instructor pilot to do this interview. And I look forward to continually working with all multinational people. And thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anytime.